Hello and welcome to the Author's Den. I'm your host, Mike Talley, and with me today is one of the most vivacious people I know, Ber Henda Williams. Thanks for being here, Ber Henda.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. And we're going to talk about Ber Henda's book, Memoirs of the Human Experience, and what it took to write it, publish it.
I wrote it, I published it, I promoted it, I everything it.
Well, first off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, my name is Ber Henda Williams, and I am the host of Poetry Pages and Scribes, which happens the first Thursday of every month here at the Southfield Public Library in the auditorium. And we're pleased to say that we're getting ready to go into our 4th season here at the library, and we open ourselves up to not just poets, but other performance artists. We've had musicians, we've had storytellers, we've had even people do prose and short stories. So we are here for whatever artistic discipline, as long as it's within the fine and performing arts.
Now, that's how I first got to know you, through Poetry Pages and Scribes. But tell me a little bit personally about yourself, about maybe where you were born, your family. Do you have siblings?
Sure, I have siblings. I'm in the middle. I have 2 other sisters. I grew up here in Southfield. I live in Southfield. I am a teacher, and I owe all that credit to some wonderful, wonderful Spanish teachers that I've had, particularly in the Southfield Public Schools. I'm a graduate of Southfield Lathrop. Went to Bernie Middle School, Stevenson Elementary School, so I am definitely a Southfield girl.
Now, you talk about Poetry Pages and Scribes, and you mentioned Spanish. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but was anybody else in your family involved in the arts at all? Or?
Oh yes, my mother is an avid reader, avid lover of the arts. I remember as a little girl going to the DIA, and then around 3rd or 4th grade, I went to visit my uncle in Europe, and we went to the Louvre, and I've been to Bavaria to see the original Disney castle. We spent time in Paris, and we went to the Palace of Versailles, and so we saw the gardens of the King Louis XIV. So art has always been a huge part of my life.
You know, what do you do for a living?
I'm a teacher.
What do you teach?
I'm a Spanish teacher.
Well, how did that come about?
Well, again, my love for Spanish was spurred early on. I started speaking Spanish in 8th grade, and I'm actually a middle school teacher. My students ask me, how did you get so good? Where did you learn Spanish? And I said, you know what, I started Spanish when I was your age, and I started Spanish at Bernie Middle School. I was around 14 years old, and continued my love for the language and culture.
Is that something that you use daily?
Oh, every day. Every day in the classroom, with friends, in my art, in Memoirs of the Human Experience, everything in between in the book. As a matter of fact, I have bilingual poetry. Some may refer to it as Spanglish, where I go back and forth and alternate between Spanish and English, and then I have complete Spanish poetry with English translation.
Well, you know, let's go back to Poetry Pages and Scribes, because
Sure.
I know you so much from that. What is it again, and who participates?
Absolutely. Poetry Pages and Scribes is a monthly poetry series here at the library, and who participates? We have an open mic, and we also have a feature. So, for example, the first part of the show is to whomever wants to sign our open mic list. As long as you keep it to 3 minutes and 10 seconds, you're more than welcome to come up to rant, rave, yell, scream, whatever you like. And then at the latter part of the show, we highlight a local established artist, if you will. So one time, last year, as a matter of fact, for our anniversary, we actually had the Cruz Brothers here, salsa band, out on the patio to commemorate our anniversary. And we also have had just a variety of different voices to come to our stage.
Talk about Andre.
Yes, DJ Andre Royster comes to us from Echoverse, which is our brother poetry venue, and they're every Friday, and they've actually they're moving to the Detroit Public Library, so there'll be a monthly series as well, with a couple of special performances throughout the year, such as Battle of the Sexes, which is really important. Traditionally, it's been a fundraiser for the Detroit Slam team, which goes to slam with poets from all over the world, really. They all converge on a selected city through a corporation called PSI, which is Poetry Slam Incorporated. Their headquarters are in Ann Arbor. And typically, in the past, they had this thing called Battle of the Sexes, where each year it's men versus women, and it's all in good fun, but it is a fundraiser for the slam team to go. And then also they have another program, Hotter Than July, and then the annual, which everyone looks forward to, is the very erotic poetry, which is Passion Fruit.
Talk a little bit about what your role is with Poetry Pages and Scribes, and I'm curious, do you find the same people coming back, and what's your relationship like with them?
You know, Poetry Pages and Scribes has really, really added so much richness to my life. People do come back. They don't know at first that it's here, and then once they find out that it's here, it's like they want more. And I always affectionately say that poetry is that thing people like, they don't know they like it, because it's definitely not dry, it's not boring. We are very lively. We make sure that every person that comes to the stage gets shown an insurmountable amount of love. We celebrate what we call virgins to the microphone, meaning that it's your first time reading poetry on our stage. So no matter how seasoned you are or unseasoned you are, you get the same amount of love if it's your first time here at Poetry Pages and Scribes.
Do you see yourself kind of as a mentor then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm proud to say that all of the young people that have come to Poetry Pages and Scribes, some have started out in their sophomore and junior years of high school. They're now all at accredited 4-year universities.
We talked off camera about some students that you were particularly proud of that
Yes.
gave a reading. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Well, one of my darlings is Marissa Shorter, who I believe had a teen segment on Channel 15, and I was really proud to help facilitate that. And she's just a budding poet. In fact, she opened along with another one of my students when I was teaching at Henry Ford Academy. Her name is Rihanna Barnes. They both had an opportunity to open for Harry Belafonte about 1.5 years ago for the ACLU dinner in Dearborn.
Well, what was that like? Were you there?
I was there, and there was not a dry eye in the room. There was over 500 people, and I was just, as an educator, as a mentor, that was one of those moments that I couldn't be more proud. I mean, I cried. The people at the table with me, they were in tears with me. Everyone was visibly, even Harry Belafonte himself, was visibly moved by their words.
That's exciting.
It is.
It must
very
have been thrilling
exciting.
for them.
Yeah, it was. They were very excited about it. They were a little nervous at first, but I think with any challenge, you're going to naturally rise to the occasion, and they rose to the occasion. I couldn't be more proud of them.
Let's talk about your early reading influences. Do you remember what the first books you read, or who the first authors you read?
Some of my first authors back in, I would say high school, is really where the love of poetry rather started for me. It was in Spanish class, and I would say Lorca was a huge influence. Neruda was a huge influence. As I got to college, definitely the Harlem Renaissance, so your Claude McKays, your Kunti Cullens, definitely moved me. And even going back further, Sappho will be a huge influence on me. You know, later, and even in some of the work that I write in certain archetypes, you can see kind of a Sapphoistic influence. But you know, your Nikki Giovanni's definitely for the sass. I love her. And Sonia Sanchez, I have her book of haiku, and it completely moves me.
Did your family encourage this, or did you have anybody that inspired you to read?
My aunt, my great-great-aunt was a poet, and she was actually published just after the riots here in Detroit in the 60s. And she wrote a piece about what she saw, happening in her neighborhood, and the effect that the riots, not only in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense that it had on the community, white flight, definitely loss of economic power, a loss of just complete disenfranchisement that people were feeling, the anger, the sense of loss, no direction. She was able to articulate in a poem.
What were your first attempts at writing?
My very, very first attempt at writing, I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, was just basically over a boy. I had a breakup, my first heartbreak, and it was actually a singer that was sort of the catalyst for me to write the first poem. Her name is Karen Wheeler from a group called Soul to Soul, and that's what initially got me to actually pen my own work.
Well, give me some history to the book then. I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it all, but from what I've read, I really enjoy it. And there's some basic themes in it, and it's obvious that you're a very romantic person.
Very.
Talk about the book and what was involved in writing it.
Sure. I woke up one Saturday morning just very spirit-led to go downstairs and start writing the book. I took all my notebooks and went through all of my notebooks, and at the time that I completed the book, I was 25. So every poem from 25 back to maybe the age of 15, 16. I had to filter out and figure out which ones were going to go in the first volume, because there is a second volume to come. But in any case, it was just a great culmination. I mean, I knew exactly what needed to be, what poems needed to be, and it was very easy for me to write the first one.
Looking back at the book, what were some of your inspirations?
Definitely love is always going to be a huge inspiration to me. The acquisition of love, the loss of love, the building of love, the dismantling of love, the things love makes you do, the things love makes you see or not see. I believe that our human existence is all predicated and followed by love.
I seem to recall talking with you about your grandmother.
Yes.
How did her influence affect you?
Sure. My grandmother and I, in an essay in the book entitled 6 Degrees of Separation, 60 Degrees of Separation, Love, Sex, Champagne, we went on a trip to California back in 2005. And at the time, she was going to celebrate the 90th birthday of one of her girlfriends. And that was an awesome celebration to go there to celebrate her girlfriend's 90th birthday, but also she had another friend that she went to nursing school with who at the time was 93. And just to see these three 90-somethings still have this finesse for life, still have this hunger and approach life with zeal and tenacity, it was just amazing to me. I mean, she still amazes me. My grandmother's 94. And it astonishes me that, she gets up every day, makes her coffee, and still has, she says, vim, vigor, and vitality is what she says she's full of. And it's true. She's seen depression, she's seen boll weevils, she's seen great migration from the north to the south, she's seen recessions come and go, presidents come and go, but nothing has been a deterrent for her. She has fight.
The real will.
Yes.
A real inspiration for you too.
Yes, yes.
When I looked at the book, it seemed to me that there were a few different types of writing in there. Can you talk about that?
Sure. The book is a collection of poetry, preludes, and essays. So you're right, there are different styles or veins of literature within one book. And it was important to me because traditionally speaking, my book is too long for a poetry book. But since I self-published, I said I'm going to write what I want to write. And in so doing, it was a very cathartic experience for me to write my book, my story, my truth. And I didn't want anyone to dictate how that came together. And I was just spirit-led to put all of these veins together. And so far, the reviews have been really great. And all of them together has worked out.
Can you clarify a little bit for me? I guess I'm not really clear on what, for instance, what a prelude might be in contrast to the others.
Absolutely. A prelude, in some of the sections of the book, there's a certain theme. And so, like I said, the loss of love, the gaining of love, the ambiguity, I thought it would be best to put a prelude in there so that the reader felt like I was there with them as they go on the journey with me. And I wanted to add that personal touch so that the reader themselves would begin to see themselves in the pages. Some of the feedback that I've gotten when people read, it sounds like your voice, it sounds like you're with me as I'm reading this book. And that's good because I want it to be very personal.
I'm jumping around a lot here. As we're talking, I'm thinking of all these questions I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
I'm going to back up a little bit, and because I know that the Poetry Pages and Scribes is so important to you.
Yes, it is.
There's something about a poet. When I think of a poet, I think of a person who's spent a lot of alone time in a room writing for themselves, no audience, but yet you're really part of a performance network. Can you talk about that?
That is such an interesting observation that you have that I've yet to pen, because I've been inspired by that sort of thought pattern that, yes, as a poet, it is a very lonely sort of craft, in that you do spend a lot of alone time, and you do spend a lot of time in your head, in your own space. And yes, you tell everyone else's story. I mean, I don't think the experiences are anything unique, but the actual art formation is very solitary. And in that solitude, one can be or find loneliness and despair because no one gets sort of where you are. But then at the same time, in order for poetry to be effective, you have to share it. It has to be published in a book form, or it has to be said. So then you do need the audience, or you need the human participation.
In some ways, it would seem safer to be a poet because you can write in the privacy of your own home. But then when you get on stage, it's a whole different story.
It is a whole different story, and I think that that's the double-edged sword between what we call a performance poet and a page poet. And a performance poet is more along the vein of maybe like a slam poet, where it's this very high octane, high energy kind of verbal. Again, it almost sounds like shouting, but it's very amplified is a better way of saying it. It's a very amplified form of poetry versus the page poet, which uses more of a conversational style of delivery. Mm-hmm. But again, going back to the solitude, in both practices, whether you're a slam or a page poet, it is still very solitary. And I can't imagine being a slam poet, which I'm not a slam poet, how difficult it must be when people think you're talking to yourself, because they tend to go off to themselves and speak into whatever openness there is, and it's loud and it vibrates and it is very powerful. Just make sure you tap them on the shoulder gently, because it can kind of freak them out.
Well, do you have any memories of your first performance?
My very first performance. Yes. I was very nervous, and I thought that I had to read a certain way, because at the time, this was definitely at the height of the Key Club, and I had, kind of come from under the influence of Cafe Mahogany. So I thought that, the slam sort of style was the only legitimate style of performance. But I would definitely say over the years, I've definitely come into my own voice and to my own place and comfortable in my own skin as an artist.
You mentioned the Key Club. What is that?
The Key Club is a place in the city of Detroit. And around the late 90s, early 2000s, it was definitely one of the more popular places to go to hear poetry, all types of poetry, slam, page, religious, erotic, nihilistic, whatever, type of poetry.
And did you perform there?
Yes.
Do you remember your first time there?
Yes, I remember my first time there. They showed me a whole lot of love, because at the time I was a virgin to the microphone, and I'd be there every Thursday. And I mean, even when the price went up, I would still come down and put my name on the open mic list for poetry at the Key Club.
Let's talk about your book now.
Sure.
Yeah, I know you accumulated your writing over a number of years, but how long did it actually take to compile the stories?
Oh, a Saturday.
Really?
I got up really early on a Saturday. I was actually supposed to get up a lot sooner than I did, but I wanted to chase sleep a little bit more than getting out of bed early on a Saturday. But I was just really compelled, and I had started maybe like 7:30 a.m. and kept writing till almost that in the p.m.
So what was involved with actually putting the book out? Let's talk about that process then.
Sure. Well, the business part of it, or the technical end of it, was getting, ISBN number, which is a universal form of tracking the book sales, and also identifying the book electronically.
I think I need to back up then. I'm curious about the role of publishing or promoting. And you've also used the term pressing.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. The book was finished a long time before I actually found someone to press or publish the book. I am still considered a self-published author, although I do have a publisher, in that I can order as many or as few books as I want or need at a time. And my publisher laid out the book for me, and she and I worked very closely about how I wanted the book to look, how I wanted the book to feel, and everything that I had in my head, I was able to bounce off another individual and actually see it kind of come into fruition. But getting the book pressed is really the binding component. Like, this is a perfect bound book with a glossy cover. So, even the texture of cover, we sat and discussed what it should look like, what it what it should feel like.
So does that mean that the responsibility for promoting the book falls totally on you then?
The promotion end of it totally falls on me. Definitely I'm listed on my publisher's site as an Ebony Lotus author. So from that end, there is promotion. But in terms of the day-to-day bookings and signings and those things all fall on me, which is fine because I'm kind of a control freak, so that's fine.
It's still kind of a nebulous thing to me about the role of the publisher for you. And earlier you talked about was it an ISDN number?
ISBN number.
ISBN number.
The whole process of the promotion end of the book, I think, is the part that people think about last, and it should somewhere in the beginning it really should be. I mean, as you're coming toward the close of writing the book, and even when you think conceptually that you want to write a book, I think marketing and promotion needs to be somewhere at the forefront. I mean, now with the advent of Kindles and self-publishing, putting a book out is a lot easier than it's been, I think, historically. And it's definitely giving major publishing houses a run for their money because people can do what we call print on demand. So you can go to a place like lulu.com and upload your book, pick a cover, and with the matter of minutes have your own book, ISBN number and all. And it's automatically uploaded to Target, Barnes & Noble, a lot of your major retailers, and that's without having a quote-unquote publisher.
Do you track the sales yourself then, or does your publisher do it, or?
We both track, yeah, we both track the sales.
Let me back up again. What made you choose your publisher?
You know, my publisher chose me. And I have to thank Poetry Pages and Scribes. We have a mutual friend that told her she needed to see me. She had a poetry event that she was going to do. She needed a host, and she was like, oh, Ber Henda be perfect for it. You need to go out and see her. And then we started talking, and one thing sort of led to another. And that's when I told her, I'm thinking about publishing a book. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I've been to these workshops, and, they've really, come back to me sort of void, and I really wasn't all that satisfied with some of the workshops that I've been to, and I didn't know what to do. And she'd kind of been there and done that. And she had, I think, 3 titles by the time she and I met, and shared with me some of her pitfalls and gave me some advice. But in any case, she decided that I would be her first author.
That's great.
It is.
So talk about the success of the book. Where is it at? How can people find it?
Wow. The book, it is on Amazon, and it's also on my website. It will soon be at Barnes & Noble at Wayne State. Currently, it's at the Arts League of Michigan, Nubian Essence downtown, and also available for checkout here at the Southfield Public Library. And it's on its way to the Ferndale Public Library. So I would say the libraries have been very, very supportive to me, and definitely going through the virtual world. The book is there and available there as well.
How has the book been as far as opportunities? Has it opened doors for you?
It has opened many doors. In fact, I'll be doing in June a commemorative for the opening of the Ferndale Public Library. I've been commissioned to write a piece about libraries for the green tie ceremony at the Ferndale Public Library.
Nice, nice. Do you travel at all in promotion of your book?
Oh, I go everywhere. I've been to Ann Arbor, Chicago, Lansing. I'm looking to go to California. So there have been a lot of opportunities, and definitely all over the metro area. A lot of opportunities have opened up since the book's release.
So Ber Henda, would you read an excerpt from your book for us?
Sure. The name of this poem is called Me Llamo Mamá, and this is a Spanglish piece. You call me mamá aunque no soy, but I will kiss your tears and pray the best for you. You call me mamá aunque no soy, but I will discipline and chastise you like you are my very own. Protect you from los malos that live in the yellow, and we can swim with dolphins. Over lunch, you can tell me all about the monsters that live bajo tu cama. You can tell me, I huele bien, cuando you sniff my arm. I will celebrate when you make all A's. I will cry with you cuando tu papá doesn't make good on his promises. You call me mamá aunque no soy. Si yo pudiera, I would take the pain away. I will scream, "Bale, mommy," real loud and ghetto like at your graduations. Hug and kiss you goodbye as if it were saying goodnight. I tell you every day that my name is Miss Williams, pero todavía me llames mamá. Bueno, mis amores, pueden llamarme mamá. You can call me mamá.
Thank you.
Detroit has always, to me, been at the forefront of artistic movements in general. And I like to believe that Poetry Pages and Scribes, Echo Verse, and Bite This Poetry series are some of the forerunners that keep poetry alive in their work with the schools, with working with young people. And I really think that's important, working with young people, working with youth, so that the art form is perpetuated.
I see what you mean, okay. Well, what's in store for you personally, Ber Henda?
Well, my wish list, my wish list is to be sort of like yourself, a television personality where I talk about art and culture and sample different artistic venues and restaurants, and fashion has always been a huge influence on my life, so definitely getting into lifestyle sort of projects. Producing my own line of journals and pens is something else that I have in the works. Clothing line is something that I've been working on. We have some prototypes ready for the Poetry Pages and Scribes apparel line.
Huh. Any more personal goals?
To publish another book, Memoirs of the Human Experience, Love and Other Melancholy Nonsense, which is just a straight collection of love poetry. Lecturing. There's definitely some universities on my list that I'd like to speak to. For example, Wayne State is coming up soon, which is my alma mater, so very excited about that opportunity there. But definitely more travel. I want to get back over to Europe and definitely throughout Latin America. Definitely want to get to South America.
Okay. Is there any advice that you could offer writers or people that would like to express themselves?
The one thing I would say to an aspiring writer is be true to your own voice. Find and harness your own voice. You can always sharpen, grammar. Those things can be corrected, but I think finding a true, authentic, original voice is difficult, but possible and necessary. And find your own relevance. Don't look for anyone to validate you.
Anything you'd like to leave us with? Sure.
Please come out to Poetry Pages and Scribes the first Thursday of every month. We're here from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Please go onto my website. I'm a blogger, and please read my blog. So my #1 blog is called The Pleasure Principle, where I follow a principle of pleasure, be it charity, be it sacrifice, finding your own personal happiness, and a person that exemplifies that particular principle. Like I have for balance, I have 2 young women out in California that have an Wearables t-shirt clothing line, and they tell me how they have found balance with the passion that they have, and definitely giving with Brian O'Neill. And of course, poetry is my first love, where I speak about that and what it's done and what it is doing in the lives of people.
Do you do some more hands-on type of work?
Yes, I have workshops, and people can go onto my website at www.berhenda, and that's BER capital HENDA Williams.com. And I do have workshops, and as a matter of fact, in April, a few workshops that I'll be doing where it will help people to promote their own poetry book. But I believe it's generic enough to where the information that you get for the poetry, you can get for whatever genre that you're in.
Ber Henda, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Every time I'm with you, I learn something else. And I'm encouraged to write.
Good.
I really am. So someday I'm going to spring something on you.
Good.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure knowing you, and I enjoy your work.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure.